Hello and welcome to another Reaconteur video, and in today's video I'm going over some of the new information we've received from the developers and Reaconteur, what it all means, what these future updates will consist of and what they will look like, and what they're going to be adding to the game, as well as some theories about some of the less clear things in that roadmap. Hope you all enjoy, and real quick, for those of you finding one of my other YouTube channels, can you maybe just fuck off in the comments and stop saying you found my secret channel? You know, it's kind of annoying seeing as how I didn't advertise it here for a reason, and now I'm getting a lot of your stupid comments saying, why did you make a new channel instead of making new content on this channel? Shut the fuck up, please. This isn't even the biggest of my 5 channels, and you guys still manage to be the ones finding me. I don't know how. Either way, just watch the videos over there if you find them and interact with me like I'm a different person, or don't comment at all, because it's very annoying seeing people from this channel commenting on that channel about how I'm this YouTuber. That's not the fucking point. Stop commenting about it. It's very annoying. Anyway, also I'm live on Twitch. I'm kind of too annoyed from that initial rant in order to scream about it, so just come watch me at twitch.tv/Reaconteur. I'm live Mondays, Wednesdays, and some Fridays. Anyway, let's get straight into it. Alright, so recently, and by recently I mean a day ago as of me recording this, Reaconteur finally spoke out and revealed a Deepwoken roadmap detailing the updates that we will be getting in order, starting with the Authority Origin, then going on to Hallowtide 2025, and then Layer 3 with a bunch of miscellaneous updates coming out in between those. And honestly, this is huge. First of all, we know the Authority Origin is coming out real soon, because the latest Hallowtide has ever been was the second week of November, and it's usually the week of Halloween. So we should be getting the Authority Origin within the next 1 to 2 months from now, basically guaranteed, which I'll go into more detail later about why I'm kind of skeptical about it, as well as why it could be good. Then we have Layer 3, which is supposed to come out after Hallowtide, and I'm not saying it will, but I think it's possible that it could drop on the anniversary of Deepwoken, given the roadmap shown. I personally think it's very unlikely because the other miscellaneous updates which are supposed to come out in this time, but given their major update schedule, it's a slight possibility that maybe we could have Layer 3 by the anniversary, especially seeing as how they really like to drop big updates on the anniversary. Now, the miscellaneous updates shown, which will be coming out basically at any time between now and Layer 3, are going to be Faction Origins, likely to come with the Authority Origin, if not then later, the Ceramade Hollow update finally, the Vow of Iron, which I'll explain what I think is later, Divergences, which I'll also explain, ship modules, and then new islands. Now, what do all of these mean? Well, first of all, in the most direct, Faction Origins. Faction Origins are just going to be smaller factions getting new origins, which is why I think it's likely to drop with the Authority Origin, but none of the future Faction Origins are going to be nearly as big or as important as the Authority Origin, which is why, 1, they're not in the major roadmap, they're in the miscellaneous updates at the bottom, and 2, there are no factions specified. From what we know though, it's very likely that the Hive Origin could finally be coming out, because according to developer statements, that whole farming system done for it was finished months ago and was just never released in full. Then, of course, there is the Ceramade Hollow update. Long overdue. The Ceramade Hollow was supposed to have unique endgame loot, unique enemies, and even a unique boss or two. However, since it wasn't finished at the time of its release, it really has just become a low-level and early-game PvE grinding method that you could do without being bothered by other players. But seeing as how now we know that we should finally be getting the Ceramade Hollow update, we're getting at least a new boss, but definitely a new boss, and maybe some new enemies and probably some more endgame loot and new unique drops that will be exclusive to the Ceramade Hollow. And this is pretty cool, because the Ceramade Hollow has been underdeveloped for almost a year now, so it is great to see that it will finally be fully implemented, and I'm sure the devs will do great work there, and a new boss is always welcome. Everyone always wants new PvE content, right? The content updates that bring PvE stuff are always the biggest ones that bring in the most players, and it's for a reason. People like the PvE. Then there's the Vow of Iron. Now this one confuses a lot of people, but I think it's going to be a step above W rank. So if you've played Rogue Lineage, you might also have theories about this, but this is most likely a reference to the old Iron Progression Challenge from Rogue Lineage, or the Iron Lineage Challenge, which was essentially just doing Rogue Lineage fully solo progressing, no help. And you might just say, oh well, that just sounds like W rank. But it's not the point of that it sounds like W rank, because they're not comparable, they're 2 different games. It's just supposed to be the hardest possible challenge that you could do in that game. So this is likely some sort of challenge which will be a step above W rank, that you finish through progression, and then, you know, that could just be what it is. Because look, through lore, the vows are promises or limitations set upon oneself to gain benefit through some other way. So it's likely just going to be a set of restrictions which will reward you in some way post-progression, like a nice silvery gray name on the leaderboard and maybe a role in the Discord server. And after that, we have Divergences. Now, people don't know what Divergences are. I have a few theories, though. Given the track record of the devs being Jujutsu Kaisen fans, I think Divergences are going to be like Binding Vows. My reasoning for this is mostly the icon they use to showcase Divergences. A drop, most likely a drop of blood, falling, as in the loss, so a loss of blood, falling, with an arrow pointing upwards signifying gain. A loss given for a gain of some sort. Now, I think divergences are going to be a way of, like, handicapping yourself in one way to gain a buff in another way. So essentially, X debuff will apply, but also X buff based on whatever you choose would also apply. And this could offer some cool differentials to build making, especially if they make divergences like a big part of the game with tons of different buffs and debuffs and custom effects and stuff like that, with like requirements to activate them and stuff like that, which would be pretty cool, because then we could have stuff that's kind of like a toned down version of like Maestro's Tempest Eye, where yeah, he's weaker when he isn't using it, but when he is using it, he's stronger, but he has to meet the requirements to use it, which could be cool. And then we have ship modules, and I'm not gonna lie, they did not need to include this in the roadmap, because ship modules are literally like something they could include in a random weekly. Essentially, ship modules just means customizable ships. So if you've played Arcane Odyssey, where the boats are basically just like fully customizable, this is likely to be something like that. I don't think it'll be as customizable as Arcane Odyssey ships, because the boats are the best part of that game, but it's possible, so we'll see. Overall, this really didn't even need to be mentioned though. And then finally, new islands. Now, this was included in the miscellaneous part, but it sounds pretty major, and I have no idea what they could do for new islands, because a big problem with new islands in particular is that they have nowhere to come from. The most major islands in lore that aren't in-game are parts of different luminants. One of, well, technically some of the islands that I personally want to see the most are the Lullaby Isles, which are home to the Chryscids and the kinda evil Lady Confessor, who basically brainwashes her people. Look, the only problem with that is that they're part of the Central Luminant, and there are no islands within the Etrian Luminant or Eastern Luminant in lore that aren't in-game. So this means one of two things. We're either getting a new Luminant, which could be crazy, or maybe a new extension to Luminance, or, you know, some sort of new Luminant sort of thing, right? Or we're getting a bunch of insignificant islands unless the devs want to implement major retcons just to make them fit into the lore. So yeah, we're either getting bullshit we don't care about or bullshit we're forced to care about. Now I prefer the latter because it's cool that there's lore, retcon or not, but I do think it is a bit of a weird implementation because the best way to bring in new islands is a new Luminant, because just adding new islands and creating lore for it that hasn't been there since the beginning is a bit jarring. So we shall see how the devs will handle that. I think they can do good work though. Now, about the major updates, since those are the small ones I just talked about, starting with the Authority Origin. Now, this is a really weird one, right? Because the Authority Origin really shouldn't exist without the Central Luminant, in my opinion. Yes, the Authority has presence in the Etrian and Western Luminants, and they have bases, but given how much the Authority Origin is supposed to provide lore and world building, it doesn't make much sense for us to get their origin when we don't have access to like 90% of what they are, which is the Central Luminant that they reside in. Along with that, it just kind of feels kind of forced implementing an origin for the most important faction in the game before you fully develop them, and it sounds kind of like a hype building mechanic, and I honestly don't like it much. But once again, we shall see, because right, the Authority Origin could provide way to the Lightkeepers, which could provide way to the Central Luminant, which could provide way for the Etrian Authority War, which would be probably like the next major update after Layer 3 if they choose to do that, but I've talked about this in videos before, so let me not go into too much detail about it here. Then, of course, there's Hallowtide 2025, and it's going to be fun like usual. I doubt they're going to get like too much change as far as Hallowtide goes though, because Hallowtide is usually just a yearly event that people do for fun and to get the new stuff, right? So new weapons, new cosmetics, and that's probably about it. If we're lucky, we don't get a repeat of the Wretched Mob Blades on release, and all is fine, but I really doubt they're going to add anything new, because the last time they did Hallowtide, they added the new zombie like pumpkin game mode that was like 2 years ago, which they added on from the first year, and then we didn't get anything last year. But maybe we could get something this year, but I think it's pretty unlikely. It's probably just going to be a bunch of new weapons and stuff. And then finally, there's Layer 3. I don't even have to talk much about this, right? I have an entire video on Depths lore on my channel, so if you guys want to learn more about Layer 3, go watch that video, because honestly it is peak, and Layer 3 is my most anticipated update ever, because the lore involving Pleatsky is just too cool, and we're finally going to get to meet him, probably. Now, this also signifies a major turning point with the game's lore if the devs choose to do so, as the balance of power within the Deepwoken world should significantly change. In lore, nobody can really effectively access Layer 3 well, or at least not safely, but given how that is now changing, as we are going to be able to go to Layer 3 in some way, with the update, the game is going to have a huge power dynamic shift. Now, will the devs do anything about that? Sadly, probably not, because it could also be stuff leading into the Central Authority Etrian War, but we don't really know. And I'm still hyped for Layer 3 regardless, now that we finally have confirmation that it is being worked on, so I hope they do some great work with that. Anyway, that's all. I hope you all enjoyed. Please stop commenting on my other channel that I'm Reaconteur. It's very annoying. By the way, that channel is literally just my legally recognized name, so I mean, I guess you found that, right? But guys, really, I made a different channel for a reason. I didn't start fucking posting videos on this channel that are the content from that channel because I don't want it to be involved. You can watch those videos, you can interact with me, but stop acting like I am the same person on both channels. I'm not trying to be the same person on both channels. I made that channel as like a video journaling diary sort of thing. I kind of just talk about what's going on in life, kind of just talk about different topics and have fun with it. That's not what this is. Stop trying to link them so hard. And I don't even know how you guys are the ones find, well, I guess, because this is not my biggest channel. I have another channel that's bigger with this one. I just changed my voice a bit. And I'm getting all the recognition from this channel. Why? I don't understand. Regardless, right, shoutouts to YouTube members of Tier 2 or higher, Green, Brick, Goobka, High Card, and Jersey Drake fan. I love you all, of course. Check out my live channel and Twitch streams. Have an amazing day, and goodbye.